Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So this is from The Truth About Guns. It's an interesting story because it shows that gun bans don't work. What has happened in Washington State, if you're not aware, I've tried to keep you guys aware, they have banned pretty much any modern firearm. Okay? And firearms ownership has gotten even more restrictive with their new rules in the last year or two. And what they have found is they have had, so there was a law enforcement agency poll, not just poll, but it was a conglomerate of law agencies that were actually doing this. So this is like the sheriffs, the state PD, and local law enforcement agents across the state. And what they found is that these new laws had no effect. And what they instead proved was that there was a 96% increase in crime with firearms. So by their own metrics, the guys that have advocated for disarming the American populace have come to the thing we knew all along. Fast forward to where we're at in New Mexico. So we're getting ready for the 2024 session that'll start up probably, well, it will start in 2024. But New Mexico Shooting Sports Association has released their new newsletter. And the priority for our little tyrant Grisham is gun control. She wants to revisit a gun ban. She wants to ban semi-automatic or assault weapons. She also wants to put an ammunition restriction in. She wants to ban hollow points like New Jersey does, as well as the same things where she wants to limit the age of purchase of firearms. And I think we're in for another fight. I think that what's going to happen in the 2024 session is there was some stuff that was passed in the 2023 session that isn't very popular right now. There was a up till birth abortion ban that, or not abortion ban, but to allow up till birth abortions, as well as a lot of this DEI stuff that's in schools for pro-abortion stuff, as well as pro-diversity, equity, inclusion. That's that DEI stuff I was saying about. It has to go down that path of the transgender stuff, is what they're trying to push through schools, through the curriculum. Now, having worked for schools for a long time before I took a early retirement and started working on my own business, I know for a fact that they have a very good potential of infiltrating the schools they already kind of have. But the state of New Mexico, just like every other state, the Department of Education is the deciding factor. And it's not every state. New Mexico is one of those weird states where the LEAs, the local education authorities, don't have authority over much. They can approve the budget, they can hire and fire the superintendent. Other than that, they have to adopt state curriculum, do state testing, and roll forward. So as long as these are in standard for the Department of Education for New Mexico, this stuff is going to get in there. Now, why am I bringing this up now about, this podcast is about politics and guns? Well, this is politics, but specifically, there's been, at several of the gun shows I've been to, in fact, all of them lately, there's been a group, and I've even seen them at my church, where they're trying to get people to sign petitions, and I've signed the petition, to be honest, to fight this type of woke agenda stuff in the Roundhouse. Now, since there's been, like the movie Sound of Freedom, and there's been an increased backlash from parents seeing what is going on with these child drag shows, I think this is going to be the fight that they're going to have to fight in the Roundhouse, meaning that the focus is going to be on this, not guns. What usually happens in New Mexico, and I could be wrong because, it's very possible because we do have turncoat politicians. But what should happen, what I see happening, is that when it comes to budget negotiations, that's what usually takes the majority of the legislative session. And with this being such a hot-button issue right now, and more people waking up to it, I contend that there's going to be bills and amendments that are pushed out and debated, heavily debated, on those former issues that are going to take precedence over any gun control. They're going to try. They always try. This is where we'll have to be very vigilant in New Mexico. Otherwise, we will end up like those other states, specifically like Illinois or Washington State. You know, we've already seen a spike in crime in New Mexico after the bail reform stuff that they're doing, and we're just now starting to see the looting type crimes happening here in New Mexico, like they've been happening in California and other parts of the country. So it's up to us to be very vigilant and get out and say no. There's also going to be a push towards crime bills. So with crime bills, that's where they like to roll in gun control. And that's where I could see them trying to put this type of gun control in as a liner for a crime bill. And that will turn some people to vote for it. Our reps and our senators that is in New Mexico. So we have to look at that stuff continually, and I'll try to give you guys updates as I see them as we get closer to the 2024 session. We're still a ways off. They haven't called a special session yet, which is a good thing in New Mexico, because a special session is usually where they do screw you with one of these because it's a short session and you can't show up. What happens is the debates for these gun bills gets shuffled around, and you don't get to them in time to start debating them or telling them what you feel to redress your grievance with these bills. So that is on the horizon in New Mexico. Biden has already said he's wanting to ban assault weapons nationally. So with that, we need to watch the turncoats in D.C., just like we do in the Roundhouse here in New Mexico. These are the guys that'll go in there and say they're going to do, give us the heaven and the moon and the sun and everything else until they get into office, and then they do the bare minimum, or they look past stuff that should be looked at. This stuff that we're seeing in society isn't popular. Despite what the leftists and the Democrats like to think, this DEI stuff is kind of wearing thin with everyone. I have a couple leftist friends who are devout leftist, have even said they're tired of this woke crap in so many words. They were talking, this one guy specifically was talking about furries. I won't name him because I don't want to out him as having a conservative, well, I'm not even a conservative friend, a libertarian friend, or an ANCAP friend. He said, I'm not calling you Caesar, whatever, and I'm not calling you vociferon, wolf of the forest either. If you can't present as what you're trying to pull off, I'm probably going to misgender you. And this was a leftist saying that. Now in New Mexico, I think that's kind of the common norm, is if you see people, we try to be polite. I'm not dissing on trans people if they're adults and that's what they want to do. What I do want to diss on is if they want to gripe and complain about us using the wrong pronouns. The stuff the leftist was specifically talking about, my leftist friend, is what in the cultural world or the culture war world are called neo-pronouns. And these are a big thing if you're keeping abreast of the culture war. I still think we're winning this in a lot of fronts. Otherwise, you wouldn't see movies like Sound of Freedom come out and be as popular as it is. It's on track right now to beat Indiana Jones in the box office. It's already made up for its budget it had. It is a great film. I would strongly encourage anyone who's listening to this to go out and watch it. It's a tearjerker. It will kick you in the gut. But it's a necessary kick because this stuff is real. That's something that we do see in New Mexico. We have caught sex trafficking stuff because we're a border state. And the longer we ignore what's happening on our southern border and we allow sanctuary cities to become more and more of a thing in New Mexico, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Las Cruces, all are sanctuary cities, we need to be very careful in New Mexico about our conservative strongholds, like 3/4 of the rest of the state. We aren't as populous as those 3 population centers. So you have to be vigilant. You have to watch out for those board meetings, those city council meetings, because what happens is city councils get overwhelmed, and if there's a loudest voice or the squeakiest wheel, they'll try to silence those people and by appeasing them, just to make sure they're getting past whatever issue they have. And that's how they win, how the leftists win, is they go to these and they continually be the loudest, loudest cog, greasy, like bad people. They're the loudest people in the crowd, and we need to fight it. And the only way to fight that is to show up and be present. Look at the agendas, because they have to post those agendas before they have those meetings. Go to the meeting, be present. Don't be a jerk. Be professional. Be polite. But make your point, because that is how we win, is by intelligent thought-provoking pieces. If you just go in there and you say, I hate this is bull crap, and you're basically a jerk, what usually happens is you're asked to leave. And I can say that having to preside over, or having to record, board meetings for a school district that I worked for many, many years. But be present. Get in there and make your voice heard. Because the board and the city councils are humans. They don't know about a lot of this stuff either, especially in small towns, because there's a lot of people that have checked out of the political and cultural war debates right now. And this is the hottest topic and the hardest place that we have to fight right now, because this is how we kind of win. As I said before, it took a lot of time between 1776 and 1787, I believe, when they signed the Constitution, or signed the Declaration of Independence, to get it fully ratified with a Bill of Rights. We are in that fight right now where we have to keep making as much progress as we can and making our voices as readily heard as possible until such time that we have exhausted all other avenues. It's sad to see that we have a 2 or a 3-tiered justice system, but we have to work with what we have until we can get outside of that. Now, free men don't ask permission. I would tell you to do whatever you feel you need to do, and just because it's a law does not mean that it's morally or justly correct. This is where those small town meetings matter, because if there's 20 people in there complaining about some sort of woke bullcrap agenda, but there's 400 opposing that agenda, it speaks volumes, and you'll see them shift in a rapid hurry. And that I've seen in San Juan County in New Mexico time and time again when they've tried to pass gun ban stuff in the state. We became a sanctuary county and a sanctuary city for the 2A, but that means nothing until law cases are tried. You're going to have to go to court, and you're going to have to fight it out. This is where being a member of something like GOA or SEF, the Second Amendment Foundation, or SAF, I should think is what it is, and FPC are kind of important, because if there's enough people or there's an egregious enough case, they will come in and help fight that. We have to band together when it comes to the 2A, because this is the only thing left that's protecting us from them doing even more intrusive and bad things. Now pay attention, because the digital world is where the left likes to fight right now. They like to watch or put stuff out on Twitter or use mass media right now, And the general populace eats that stuff up without doing any fact-checking, because they actually look at the old school media as being legitimate, 100% legitimate, versus independent reporters, independent podcasters, independents in general, who tend to look at things more holistically as what is it actually going to do. And that is something we all have to do. That's probably why you found this podcast, is because I try to keep you abreast of the situations we're in right now. The biggest ones I see when it comes to the Second Amendment, which is my single issue really to vote on, is the bans that they're trying to push down. It's not popular despite what they're saying, and you're seeing more pushback in the digital world, especially on Twitter, where they're pushing back against these guys trying to push bans. Biden is slammed and ratioed consistently. If you don't know what a ratio is, that another comment in their thread of tweets gets more traction or gets more upvotes, basically, than their tweet. That's called ratioing. Biden and Kamala Harris get ratioed all the time because of the stuff they do in the Second Amendment world. You see people like Phil Labonte. You see people like Joe Rogan. You even see people like Elon Musk saying, no, that's a bad plan. And you see fact-checking now on Twitter, and it's actually pretty based in reality, not like it used to be. Twitter has been restored back to what it was originally intended to be, an information source, a way to interact with people, the public square. That said, it's not necessarily a place for kids. I've seen debates as of today that I never thought I would ever see. One of those debates, which I don't know how I feel exactly about, because my job when I was working in the school districts was to make sure kids had access to internet, is that a good thing? And that's the debate that I'm hearing right now in a couple of circles, is having access to internet has hurt or gave the potential to hurt kids, and we should age verify every kid or possibly even restrict their internet access. Now, being a free speech activist, I understand those dangers, and one of those debates that I got into was they were saying they don't have the technology to filter that internet for them. They do in the school districts. They have to have it by law. Okay, SIPA and COPA are a thing. So Child Information Protection, or Child Internet Protection Act, and the Child Information Protection Act. Those two things, SIPA and COPA, are something you have to understand exist. Any entity that gets E-rate money, so libraries and schools, that's their money they use for internet and for infrastructure improvements, that type of thing. They don't get access to that without filtering their internet. That is by law. So they have the technology. Now, in the homes, they don't. This is where it becomes a cliff or a slippery slope where I could honestly see them turning this against normal citizens. If you restrict kids, what's to stop you from restricting adults in the same manner? And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. That's the heartburn with this, is that when you start looking at the internet protection type stuff, there are enough fragile individuals of weaker minds, I should say, that need to be sheltered away from some things. And it's just the way of the world. At the same time, I don't believe that's where the government comes into play, that the government shouldn't tell an adult what they can see or what they can do. However, unrestricted access to porn leads to getting kids hurt. And I'm actually okay with age verification. Yeah, that's a removal of privacy to some extent. But let's be honest, porn's probably done more harm to society in its free access form than what it ever has in the world before us. That said, I have no real objections to the stuff. I really don't care, other than there's probably a lot of this we shouldn't let kids or youngsters see. And it probably breaks that trust early with kids that we want to keep. As I've said on this podcast before, keeping kids innocent is a good plan. Now, on the left, they say teaching a kid to shoot is grooming. And I kind of agree it is, but at the same time, you're grooming them to understand their rights as a civilian, an American citizen. It is incumbent upon every parent to make sure the kids know their rights, because these aren't exactly lessons that are taught in schools anymore. Schools basically want, they've been relegated to reading, writing, and arithmetic and test taking. That's it. The school of thought that they have, where they're trying to encourage actual individual thought and actual, what's called linked learning, or there's a ton of different words for this. With that, it's very limited in the teachers and the administrators where they focus that energy. And I say that because there is so much pressure from the State Board of Education. I was thinking of the word again. The State Board of Education is focused on the test results, and they're focused on the results of how their graduation ratio is for high schools, and what the level of skill and proficiency they have in reading and spelling. And that muddies the water of self-thought, because a lot of people are able to pull information out and regurgitate it by rote. I was one of those kids. However, there was a lot of kids in my age group that could do that, but not connect the dots of what that actually meant. I remember having a teacher, very good teacher, teach us about our rights and actually go through what that actually meant. I'm from this weird school of thought where, and the teacher was too, that they actually explained what the Fourth Amendment was and what that meant to you as an individual who's of age. That is something that I don't see happening anymore, or didn't see happening anymore in the schools. That's one of the reasons why I left, was realizing that we are very far away from where I thought we would have been or should have been, where being a good person and being a good American wasn't necessarily encouraged. And it wasn't always because of administrators. It was usually because of those infiltrator teachers. And that's where we need to be careful. Same thing goes for a lot of those leftist boards. San Juan County, I would say 2 of the 3 boards in the area are probably very much in line with conservative thought or libertarian thought and American thought. Classical liberalism is what that's called. The other ones, I would say, are probably leaning left more so than what you would like if you are a parent that has decided to send their kids to school still. I am of the volition now that public education probably should go away in its current form, and homeschooling should probably be the way of the future, because then the parents actually get to see exactly 100% of what kids can do and can learn from. And they get more of a say in their curriculum than what they would get from the state. Where the state, it's going to be very cookie cutter, and it's going to say, these are the standards, you have to do this, you figure out how to get those standards. Then they're going to make you stick to curriculum. This has been a very heavy podcast that's on the educational system, but I think it's very focused in what we need to look at for this upcoming year. I would say we're in for a spicy time with the election, the primary election, exactly. Basically, it's looking like both sides, right and left, are going to have a primary. And it means that there's a potential that old Sleepy Joe doesn't get in, but there's also a potential that Trump doesn't get in. And of all the candidates right now, I'm still kind of leaning towards Vivek Ramaswamy. And I say that because I don't believe Trump can win. And when I say that, is there's so much ire and hate focused at the man that I don't believe anyone that's leaning slightly left in any way on any other issue is going to be able to get past their Trump derangement syndrome. And that is a real thing. You see that stuff in the digital space a lot more than what you see in the media space. If you're watching classical news channels, you're not going to see as much Trump hatred unless you're focused on like CNN or MSNBC. So like, share, subscribe, be great.
I can't let it slide. My politics are rather controversial. Who would have thought that I ain't catching all slack and I